So for step 5, attaching the motor, well, you can see that we've got to grab this C9 piece, which is going to need to be attached to the motor through these 2 screws and a couple of nuts. And you can see they're showing you how that's going to go here, but we'll get to that. Then once that is done, we're going to attach it to the gearbox, and then we've got this cover that's got to go on, and these 2 screws will attach the motor to the gearbox. But we also have this C8 and C5 piece that has to be attached to the gearbox as well. And those pieces are what's going to be used to attach the rear shocks at a later step. So there are the screws that we need. There's the little screws for the motor. They're kind of a brass looking screw. We've got a couple of nuts, and then there are the tapping screws that we need as well. So we've got our gearbox, we've got these pieces I was just mentioning, and there is our 380 motor, which already has the pinion gear installed. So I'm going to build this kit stock, but at a later date we may want to upgrade this to a 540 so that we can get a little bit more power out of it. But for right now, I'm going to build this and show you putting it together as a stock kit. So I'll set this up and we'll put it together. So first off, let's put the C9 piece on. And you'll notice the way that this side has all of the sort of, you could say, the inserts, whereas this side is completely flat. So we know that this is the direction that this needs to go. You can also see that this is where the 2 nuts are going to fit into. Just like that. And you'll also notice that based on the way this is, it looks like we're going to need to attach this to those 2 holes right there across from each other, because you can see that there isn't one across from this one, so it has to be those 2 holes. So if we turn this or put that in just like that, you'll notice that there are the 2 holes on either side. Notice that I'm just sort of showing you that I can move this around. That's where they need to go, and that's the placement. So what are we going to do? We are going to, and I just want to see if, yeah, if I try to match this closer to, notice I tend to do this. Notice that one of the air holes on the motor, it's right there. So I'm going to actually build this so that it's as close to that as possible, meaning that this shape of everything is going to look exactly the same. So if we grab one of our BA2 screws, you can see that it's going to go right there, and this is a flat-headed screw. So I'm just going to screw this in a bit. I haven't gone all the way, but enough that it's in. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the other side. Okay, so now that they're both in, I'm just going to tighten this up. On both sides. There we go. And there we go. So there is our motor plate attached to our motor using those 2 brass screws. And again, notice where that motor hole is. I've kind of placed it so that it's somewhat where this would go. So it's almost identical to what we see in the diagram. So that part is done. So now we need to attach this to our gearbox. So I think what I'll do is let's put these other pieces onto the gearbox before we do anything else. So you can see that the way this is meant to go on, that there is a sort of a lip or this protruding bit on one side, and this side obviously has a couple of holes, but on this side there's the one and then a little one on the top. But you can see that this is designed to slide over, and these notches here are going over the axle here. So you need to line this up properly so that it actually is seated on top of that properly. And you can see that it's going to go into there, which means that our BA4 is going to go into there and screw into the gearbox. So let's do that. And again, we're going into hard plastic. I'm just going to do one final little test there, but yes, that is all the way. So ultimately that is what it's going to look like. So we need to do the same thing with the other side. So obviously this open side where it's sort of, you can see that it's these bits here are on the inside of that. This is the outside because it's completely flat except for this protruding bit. So we're going to slide that onto there, and same thing again. We're going to grab this BA4, get it going into the end, and we're going to tighten this all the way. And again, because it's hard plastic, as soon as you get to the end, it's going to stop and you'll know you're there. There we go. So there are those two bits, and again, those are for the rear shocks when we install them at a later date. So what do we got left to do? We need to put our motor onto the gearbox. So I am first going to grease up our pinion. There we go. And again, I'm not going to go too crazy, but I am going to make sure that there's enough on there. And we're definitely coming down to the end of this tube. But we've got enough on there now. So you can see that I've got enough basically all the way around. And what we're going to do, this obviously has to slide on this way, matching that curve of here. So that's going to go in there. And then we've got our cover. Now what I'm going to do, just to make this easier so we can see what's going on, if I put one of them in, and you can see that that's going to go into the top hole there, so that that's closed. On the other side, you can see that it's sticking out. So what we want to make sure of is that it's going to go into this correctly. And where is that screw going? It's going into those nuts that we put in on the previous step. So let's put that one in place and make sure that that goes into the hole. Yes. And I'll just start tightening that down. And then on the bottom, we've got to do the same thing. Slide that through, make sure it goes into that nut on that piece there. There we go. So I'm going to now screw these down all the way. And once you get to the end, you'll know, because it's going into that nut. So you'll feel it. I can't tighten that up anymore. So it's in the correct spot. So there we go. There is our 380 motor installed onto our gearbox. And of course, these wires will eventually connect to the ESC, but again, at a later date. And everything still is moving smoothly. So everything is fine. So there we go. There is our gearbox and our 380. So that means that step 5 is complete. So now we're going to move on to step 6, which is checking the RC equipment. This is where you're going to need your battery charged, so you can go ahead and do that. And of course now we're into bag B.